Man, the college football weekend roundup. It was a lot of interesting games this week, I'll tell you that. But man, I'm gonna start with my two favorite teams in college football. The Miami Hurricanes Friday night, boy. I mean, it was only 24-21. It wasn't like they got slobber knockered or nothing like that. But they did get outplayed. That's for sure. They got outplayed. Definitely got outcoached. Uh, the turnovers, though, Carson Beck, he threw for 271 yards, but that was all for nothing because he threw four interceptions, and it really should have been five because I looked at the highlights, and it really should have been five. It really should have been. But he got away with that one, that roughing the passer call. That was a bad call. So it's neither here nor there with that. But in that aspect, the Miami Hurricanes have nowhere to go but up from here on out. So all I'm going to say is that they can't lose again for the rest of the year. See the difference between those Miami Hurricane teams years ago and then this and these most recent ones in the last 25 years. No, I would say the last 20 years for sure. The difference between those teams is that those teams took full advantage of their schedule. They dominated their opponent. Even if they couldn't dominate them all the way, they still came out on top to win the game. They still had enough to finish and win the game. The whole point of why you play sports, period. And that's what's missing, I think, with this team. I thought they had that mentality last week, but only looked like one of their players, the Hurricane Bane, and he wasn't even effective yesterday, Friday night. But they need to go and look at how they finished those games. Those old teams, they just don't be like them teams. You can't ever be them. Those teams, their history's already made. You can't be those teams. But one thing you definitely can do is, just take a page out of their book, see how they finished their games, and see how they ended up their seasons. I mean, yes, one loss in this era, it doesn't really mean nothing. You can still bounce back from a loss. Hell, you can even bounce back from two losses. It just depends on, how your opponents you play and everything like that. But this ain't like years ago where if you lost that one game, you was 10-0, and you lost that one game, you was out of the national championship conversation. I mean, it was just a whole different time. Like, but I'm just gonna say that the Miami Hurricanes, they still got a great shot to make the college football playoff, and I'm looking forward to seeing them in the CFP this year. That's for sure. Uh, but they got a lot of work to do. I mean, Georgia Tech is still on the route, on the schedule, like, and that team gives them hell every year. Every year, they don't run that option offense no more. Thank God. And I don't know how Calvin Johnson did that for years in that offense, but they just got to finish the rest of the season strong. But Carson Beck, you really need to make up for them four interceptions. You really do. But I think you got enough talent to do that. So I'm not going to be um, really too worried about it. I'm not going to be too worried about that. Now, the USC Trojans, though. Now that's going to be interesting right there. So I watched that game tonight, and USC. I'll tell you this right now about USC. USC, they look really, they have their moments in this game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame is just an exceptional team. They're very well coached. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. Those are two of the best running backs in college football. But that might be the best running back duo in college football. And I think Jeremiah Love almost had 200 yards rushing tonight, which that's going to be a lot to be said about SC's defense going forward. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. But those two guys are definitely the best duo running backs in college football. I can't think of any other duo that's better than that right now. But as far as USC goes, I mean, the play calling, the flea flicker at that point in the game, I don't think you should have did that. That's how you just had a 42-yard reception with Makai Lemon. That and you were only down 27-24. Why are you doing the tricks right there on the road against this type of defense, Notre Dame's well-coached defense? Why would you do that kind of play? Yes, I understand you're trying to make a statement win, Lincoln Rhyme and all that stuff, but I don't think you need to call that there. Like, I mean, what do you have Brian Jackson there for? What do you got King Miller for? They came to run the ball. That's a time where you run the ball at that point, especially where the ball was. But they tried to be fancy and they got caught up really bad. So they got to, do a lot of work. They done lost twice in the last 3 weeks. They still, uh, the shot for the CFP, it would have been more stronger if they won on the road tonight. But it's going to be really hard to get up in there. The next 3 games are winnable, in my opinion. They play Iowa, Northwestern, and it's another team that's on that kind of level. Like, they got to go to Nebraska. Nebraska is playing better, but USC has enough talent to beat Nebraska. But, I mean, that's going to be another tough road game. You got to learn how to win on the road, regardless. I don't care what nobody says. You got to learn how to win on the road. So, with that being said, the last 2 games of the year is Oregon and then UCLA. 2 very tough games. Like, because UCLA, I got to give UCLA credit. They was 0-4, and people was making all kind of memes, talking about that team, writing them off, and just said they were the worst Power 4 team they've ever seen, ever. That's what they were saying about them. And the fact that they have ran off 3 wins in a row, and 2 of them have been in some pretty convincing fashion. I mean, I just got to give them all the praise right now. And that's hard for me to do as a USC fan. But the fact that you were 0-4, your coach just got fired, and you was losing to New Mexico, stuff like that, it wasn't looking too good for them. But they done bounced back pretty strong. So that game at the end of the year for USC, that's going to be more stronger than they think. That's for sure. The Oregon game, though, if they can reel off these wins for the next 3 weeks against Nebraska, Iowa, and Northwestern, and then they start getting some momentum going, and then they also get a lot of help, which they can get a lot of help because there was a lot of teams that got beat today. You can get a lot of help today because, just because you're in the top 15 today don't mean you will be in 2 weeks. It just happens. I mean, there's going to be probably I think 4 or 5 teams shuffling out of the top 15. So you could get back up in there, but you're going to need a lot of help from losing, from the top 25 teams losing. But if they can get in that stretch, win those 3 games in that stretch, and then they win the Oregon game, and I'm just assuming that Oregon's going to continue to win, even though they did have their loss, but they lost to a tough team. I mean, so the week before. So I don't expect them to be losing anytime soon when that game comes up. But if they reel off 3 wins in a row, and then they also take on Oregon, and then they somehow beat Oregon, they just put their best game together of the year and beat Oregon, they got a real good shot to get in the CFP because then you got to play the Big Ten championship game still. You got to beat UCLA. I don't care how good they are and all the respect that this game, you still got whooped their ass. So you beat them, and then after you beat them, then you get to the CFP. I mean, to the Big Ten championship, and you win that game, you have a real legitimate shot to get into the CFP. You should, but now you have to just win out. You can't lose no more at all. You can't risk losing anymore if you're USC. Miami, they can probably afford to lose 1 more, but you don't want to. Like, that's my mentality. If I'm Mario Cristobal, we ain't losing again. Like, and Mario Cristobal, he's the perfect coach He played on those title teams. You need to just tell your team how you guys finished those seasons when you was on the championship teams back in 91 and 89. Like that's all you got to do. And them players, you got to go out and execute. I mean, you can't. That's another thing. Everybody's putting that loss on Carson Beck. I'll put 50% on 50% of that on him because they had no running game against Louisville. Louisville's defense is better. They got Miller Moss, the UFC reject, and everything like that. That guy, Chris Bell, the receiver, he's definitely going to be a draft pick. He got size and speed combination. Like, I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", and like 220 pounds. That's pretty fast. Pretty skilled player to be moving like that. But and I understand the defense played well and all that, but I mean, you guys was riding high, being the Florida state champs and everything like that. You just got to execute. And then when you ain't got no running game, you're not gonna do well in any level, at all, high school, college, NFL. You got to have a strong running game because if your quarterback has to keep throwing, that's gonna happen. I mean, I think their top running back only had like 18 yards. 18 yards. That was it. Nothing more than nothing. Like that's not gonna get it done. And you still got the ACC championship still. So I mean, this is just crazy that this stuff is going on. But those two teams, it was very disappointing seeing them both lose this week. But I'm still watching them. And that's one thing about me. Your team wins and loses. You got to still have the same kind of regard with them. Even if they win, if you see something in the win and then they wasn't doing something right in the win, you still got to work on that and critique that too. Like, it's just, if it's a flawless victory, which are very rare, but when they're flawless victories, I mean, yeah, gloat all day long. You don't get too many of those. But if you got a win, but you did not block well enough, like you gave up 4 or 5 sacks, you got to limit that. You got to fix that before you go into the next game and you give up 11. So that's all I'm saying. But those two particular teams, yeah, it just hurt watching it this weekend. Now, the other games I'm going to talk about. Let's see, Alabama and Tennessee, the third Saturday in October. So Tennessee, they have recently started getting back into the mix, getting their talent back up and everything like that. But I would say this, Alabama, they still talented and everything, but that's not the same Alabama. The last Saban, those aren't the Saban Crimson Tide. That's not the Saban Crimson Tide at all. But they still got enough talent to win and stuff like that. But there's no true juggernaut. There really is no true juggernaut in the SEC this year. It's wide open to me. I think any team can win it. Any team can win it. But Tennessee, they still on the come up still. I think, when Nico Iamilava, pulled that stuff and ended up in UCLA, kind of messed up what they was going to do because he was supposed to be their guy for the whole career. But that money is talking, and that money will make people just go places. Like, there's no reason for Malachi Nelson, who was the number 1 rated quarterback, I think in 2022 or 2023. There's no way he should be playing in UTEP right now. There's no way he should be a UTEP minor. He went from a USC Trojan to a Boise State Bronco to a UTEP minor. Nah, that shouldn't be happening at all. Not in my opinion. But, when the money talks, you will go play in, Boise, Idaho. You'll go play for the Idaho Vandals, stuff like that. If the money is right, I guarantee it. You'd be like, how's this dude who grew up in like Los Angeles end up in Boise, Idaho? Like, well, the money. I can see that. But, Alabama, though, they looked okay. But that was like, an easier, like, kind of match. Tennessee really wasn't in that game. I had watched a little bit of it. They weren't really in that game. Ole Miss and Georgia, I was expecting Georgia to go in there and throttle Ole Miss, and they were struggling with them. they had that magnificent fourth quarter, you know what I'm saying, and came back and won the game. But nah, Georgia, their defense is better than that. I really believe Georgia's defense is like, maybe the top three at the least. They're in the top three defenses in college football. And I don't know, they just get up for certain games, and then certain games they get lax. Like, you can't be like that. Nah, especially when you too talented. Like, in Georgia's defense, I mean, they got defenders galore. I mean, look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They got a lot of them players, and them players is all solid on that defense. Last few weeks probably not, but they got all that. Like I said, they doing what they doing right now. Like, just taking off on certain games. Like, nah, you got to keep the pedal to the metal. Especially in the SEC. Ole Miss, I think they gonna start sliding here. I think they had a good little run, but Lane Kiffin, I mean, you know me, SC fan. I seen the Lane Kiffin era, and I mean, you ain't gonna get no more than what you gonna get, Ole Miss. That's all I'm gonna say. So I don't see too much from them down the stretch. Another game I had looked at: Vanderbilt and LSU. Diego Pava, boy, like, that dude's a real good quarterback. He really is. Vanderbilt is pretty for real. I gotta say that Vanderbilt used to be just a run over team in football. The only thing I knew about Vanderbilt was Jay Cutler, and that was like a stretch because I was like, man, before he even got drafted, I really didn't know about Vanderbilt players, but it was him. And then that Vanderbilt game where they said they was the dude was really cocky about Alabama and stuff like that, about beating them, and they didn't do that at all. That's the only thing I knew about them. But this recent last 2 years, Vanderbilt has built a pretty damn good program. So beating LSU, which is wide receiver university, wide receiver U for sure, because I mean, like Jamar Chase, you know, Thursday night, man, that was an amazing performance. I arguably think that Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the NFL, period. So, coming from LSU. But LSU, they always bring out them receiver stuff, but something is missing there as well. Like, I mean, they got that good little running back, Caden Durham, but they need Harlan Berry probably to step up more. They need them other running backs to step up more. Like, I think they had a lack of a running game, and then Brian Kelly could get too pass happy. You know, so they done lost 2 games though. I don't see them. They could probably upset a team here, but I can't really see them getting into the CFP at this point. I mean, those are 2 losses, big time losses in the SEC too. So I don't even know an SEC championship is even possible now, especially after losing this one. But that was an interesting matchup there. So Ohio State, I mean, I had watched the pregame for that. Wisconsin was hyped as hell and everything. It's pretty embarrassing to be that hyped and then you don't score a damn point. That's pretty embarrassing to me. Like, so Ohio State, they took care of business. Uh, so I don't see nobody. I don't see nobody beating them at this point. They've been pretty solid. The most complete team. I'm gonna say that, and that's hard for me to say. But Ohio State's been the most complete team all year. Uh, Now Michigan beats them again, and it's very possible. I mean, Michigan, I believe they beat Washington today. Washington gave them a lot of help, but Michigan still has a solid defense. I think they still got at least a top 10 defense in college football. But if they Michigan beats Ohio State again, wow, that's going to be insane. And like I had made a pretty crazy prediction Well, I didn't really make it. I didn't really make the prediction, but it's like something I've kept in the back of my head. Somebody I have like really thought that Ryan Day could possibly get fired. I'd be like Ryan Day possibly could get fired if he lost to Michigan again. Now, let's just say I don't see them losing to any other team, but that could be a possibility. But let's just say if they did, falter against somebody here in the next few weeks or so, and then you lost to Michigan, would that warrant him being fired? Because remember, he was on the hot seat last year, and then they lost to Michigan again. But see, when the CFP came out and extended to 12 teams, he still had a chance, and then he took full advantage of his chance, and he was very fortunate to win the championship. I'm gonna say that, but and then you spent a lot of money last year to win that title. I mean, you did some Florida Marlins stuff right there to win that title, in my opinion. But I'm just saying that could be a possibility. Even though he won a championship, because I've seen coaches in the NBA win Coach of the Year. Like I think I've seen two or three. Definitely, it was George Karl, Mike Malone, and I believe Mike Brown might even been up there. It could be the third one, but they done lost their jobs after having very successful seasons, like being Coach of the Year and stuff. They done lost their job. Hell, Mike Malone lost his job before the playoffs started, which was crazy. But you know, I've seen that happen before in the NBA. College football, I can see that happening too. I really can. But I'm just saying it's a possibility because you can't just keep losing to Michigan every year at Ohio State. Like, I understand you're gonna have okay, let's say in 10 years, if you split it down the middle, okay, I think that's pretty even. But if you're the coach that's on the end of like you're 8-2 in the last 10 years or something crazy like that. I mean, man, you're gonna have to, really start, discussing, like if you don't, especially if you ain't getting further in the CFP. So if you lose that game against Michigan and you ain't nowhere close to being in that 12 seed or something like that, let's just say, like what I said earlier. I mean, you're gonna have to start questioning, like, do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to have to keep spending a lot of money to compensate for him not beating Michigan? I'm just saying. Like you spent the money last year and you still couldn't beat Michigan. So and then that's another thing, like a lot of teams they just still have chances with the CFP extended. Do I think it should be extended for more than 12 teams? Absolutely not. And I'm gonna tell you why, because when I watched it last year and I watched the first round, the games were just okay, but the teams that were supposed to win, they totally dominated. There was no upsets last year. It pretty much went like how a CFP4 would have been. It pretty much would have went like that. But you got to have better team play, like wild card teams, pretty much like how you have a wild card team in the NFL, and then they go on a run. That didn't happen in the CFP last year. Like the teams that were supposed to beat them, they dominated every opponent. Like SMU going to Penn State, mismatch. Indiana, although they had a great year and everything, and the coach done got an extension now, and they having a really good year this year. Indiana going to Notre Dame didn't work. Didn't work. Got throttled. Jeremiah Love had that 98-yard touchdown run that set the tone for the game. So all I'm saying is like those games have to be better in the CFP. Even if you get in there, like sneak up in there, like you can't just sneak up in there and just hey we just got there. Nah, they need to have some better intensity in those games from those lower seed teams than especially like last year. But I don't think they should extend it. I think 12 is enough. If you extended it to like 24 or something like that, then the top 25 doesn't even matter no more. in sports, in college football. You might as well throw the ranking system out if you're going to do that. And you just go off of like, how they do in the NFL or something like divisions and like that. You don't even need a top 25. Like, so just, I think they should keep it where it is. I think 12 is enough. If you extend it, I mean, the only reason they would extend it is just because it makes more money. But I don't think it really did too well that first week in ratings. It didn't really do too well. It didn't start taking off until pretty much like the New Year's Day games and stuff, like the regular concept of the CFP4, how it was. So, but yes, that is my weekly roundup of college football. I'm gonna be doing this again next week, for the rest of the year for college football. Uh, but I'm gonna be staying up. I'm gonna stay up all night because my Jacksonville Jaguars play against the Rams. Very big game for them. They had that big win against Kansas City. Then they had faltered against the Seahawks. But I'm really looking forward to them in this game against the Rams. If they win this game, man, the rest of the year is going to be interesting to see. And I'm going to be, but like, there's a guy, his name is Eric Dunn. He's a super fan of the Jaguars. He has a hashtag, and I live by this hashtag. Stay calm, Duval. And that's all I'm doing. I'm staying calm. I'm not gonna give them no expectations. Talk about, oh, this is a Super Bowl team, or this team's gonna win this and that. I'm not doing that. I've been a Jacksonville Jaguars fan my whole life, and our first few years we was very spoiled. We was getting the AFC Championship games left and right. We got to 3 out of 4 years. That's pretty. Three out of 5 years actually. We had got to AFC title games. And then after that, we went on a bad skid. And then we did get to an AFC title game in 2017 with the Saxville team. 2 minutes and 46 seconds away from a Super Bowl appearance. And then now we went back to that. So, with that being said, I'm not going to be doing any kind of predictions and stuff like that. Stay calm, Duval. And I live by that. Stay calm, Duval. So, Symposium Sports here, and I'm going to sign off. That was my weekly roundup of this weekend edition of college football. And I'll be back next weekend with another weekly